So many music makers today start making music by listening to what's going on right now and trying to capture those same timbres and rhythms and tones, trying to mimic what's already out there. I mean, even in so much of my work, I get sent temp tracks in a video that needs to be scored, and the client so often loves those temp tracks and wants the music to be as close as possible without them getting sued. A couple videos ago I talked about how music is a business and you have to treat it as one, so serving your client is probably the most important thing. But I want to talk about music from an artist's standpoint today and make music that sounds like other music. Could and can be a very good way to make a living. For me personally, I find that it gets a little bit stifling. It doesn't allow me to express myself as a music creator. And I'd even go so far to say that so much music that's put out today is boring. Day 10. We've come so far. Today's the final day of the 10K 10. Today's the final day of the 10K 10-day celebration giveaway. Huge thanks to everyone that has been subscribed, especially enjoying reading through the comments and getting to interact and know more about what the channel does for you and how it helps. Even bigger thanks to our giveaway partners. If you haven't entered the contest, I'll include that as the first link below. Go check it out. The contest does end October 15th. Without some originality, new techniques, inspiration, exploration, or individual voice, music is becoming more and more homogenized. There's even studies out there that prove this. Nowadays, we can think of some of the most popular film composers and their sound. They have a voice. We hear it, especially when you think about what you categorize as most of Danny Elfman's music over the last 20 years, or John Williams. They have a very specific fingerprint and you can hear it and think of them instantly. So much to the point that when someone else is copying their work, we might hear a piece of music and think, oh, is that John Williams? And look it up. Or you might think, oh, is that a bad copy of John Williams? Because music is so much like fashion, you never quite know what is going to be the next big fashion style, what is going to be hip and trendy next month or next year, because what is in is always kind of shifting and evolving. So I'd argue that challenging yourself to continue to explore and find things that express your own voice. I like to think of creating a whole musical world, selecting different timbres and tones, percussion instruments, rhythms, a philosophy, so to speak, that you can express something happy or sad or exciting or intimate. Will not only help you to express those other aspects of our deep and rich personality, but also give us the ability to expand and create a voice for our music. So with a couple examples I'll give in the end here, I'm going to show how you can take a little piece of music, just a small idea, and work on it. See what other ways you can complement it, what other ways you can alter it, how you can do variations on it. These are things that some of our favorite classical composers were masters at. Mozart, Beethoven, Mahler, Debussy, Ravel, the list goes on and on. So if you're used to like hitting a drum loop and playing a little rhythm over the top of it and calling it a day, you're probably thinking, why do I have to do this? It's so much more work. Well, by doing this work, this kind of exploration, by challenging not only what your music is like, but how you make it, you do develop these skills to create new music in your own voice that you'll continue to take with you and build on as you continue making music. So I'm going to jump into the DAW here now and show just a couple simple concepts that no matter what kind of music you're making, you can try to take and apply to pieces of music of your own and see how you can explore, create variations, find unique things, and then build on your experiences and your skill to move forward in your own work. So if I'm going to be exploring a piece of music, if I've written a little melody line, there's a few things that I'll try out to see how maybe I could make it better, how it could be complemented, how there can be variations. And I do it all in the same key when I start. And then I'm able to take it further out from there. Here's like a little melody I worked up. I've just got the new Vienna Smart Orchestra. I'm going to be playing with it for all of these examples today. So I've got this little melody right here. Very simple, a little Halloween-y because I'm putting this together in October. It's also a little bit royal and dark. You could maybe use this for a, I don't know, maybe a Dracula cartoon or something. Yeah, that'd be fun. First thing I always try to do is find out what kind of drone, pedal tone possibly could go underneath it, how that changes the sound. So I've got a couple instances now of the Vienna pulled up, and I've got one that I'm just going to be playing the drone part, this little pedal tone. It already is getting it even more of a little bit of depth, a sense of mystery. It can go a long way towards making the music more interesting. And so now I'm thinking, okay, that works. Well, what's another variation in the same kind of concept as that drone pedal tone? Well, what if I flip it around? What if instead of my melody being up there high in my woodwinds and strings, I move it down low in the woodwinds and brass, and then move up a high constant tone, either with harmonic or a high string part, and then we get an inverse kind of arrangement. And then in that same spirit, what if we were to change the basic instrumentation? Before I was using some strings and woodwinds in the high and brass and strings in the low. Now what if I got rid of my strings in the high and just allowed the woodwinds to really dominate? What would that kind of sound be? It'd be something like this. So that gives it a little bit more, I guess maybe I would call it a little more depth, a little bit more orchestral. One of the things I often say is that strings on their own, no matter how big, sounds like a string section. Anytime you have woodwinds and strings mixed together, then it starts to sound like an orchestra, even if you don't have the brass play, which I think is an interesting bit of a tidbit there. So now thinking about, I found that the woodwinds give us a nice hollow openness. It's not too intense, even though it's big orchestra sound through the Vienna Smart Orchestra. I'm kind of hearing in my head that this could become very big and epic and grand, probably more than epic, grand in the sense of just changing a little bit about it and maybe putting some horns and some brass in our upper main melody, and then actually adding a little bit of movement. So we're not just having that constant pedal tone, we're having a bass do a little walking line like this. And then thinking even further out about what we've built thus far, I'm able to think of these different pieces and mix them together. Instead of having just two parts, I'm doing three parts. Anytime I'm thinking about orchestration, I'm thinking of how it's perceived by the listener. because the human ear and mind can only take in 3, maybe 4 different concepts going on at once. That's why so often when you do score study and you look at orchestral scores, you'll see that so many of the instruments are playing the exact same thing as the other instruments. So many sections are emulating or complementing what's already going on in the rhythms or melody or harmony. So that's like 3 parts right there. Sometimes you can add a 4th. That's just my take on it. I know there's quite a bit more depth into this conversation. But moving on here, I'm taking a variation, adding a little bit more movement in our bass line, not necessarily having play super low, but having it have a little bit of movement to it. And then utilizing 2 other aspects, an arrangement of the main melody up in the mid section of the orchestra, as well as taking our drone, our pedal tone, and putting it way up high with the strings, because we saw how that was pretty effective at creating an orchestra. So I kind of did this with it this time. And then thinking of mixing up it again, what is another possible variation on kind of a bass line? I kind of start to play with something that's got a little bit more movement in it, in the brass, just to see what happens, and then take that lead melody line and put it back in the woodwind part, because it had kind of a sweetness to it, and that'll be a nice contrast. Thought maybe we'll see if this could be something that would work for an arrangement. Now, on the same lines of what we had done a minute ago, I started to think about what if I wanted to make this more energetic and do a lot of subdivisions, maybe use some kind of ostinato in our string parts like this. And see what maybe could happen if we played with that a little bit, utilizing some of the other ideas and techniques we'd already had played around with. And I added a little percussion to kind of give those 16th notes here a little bit more push and excitement. And, all of this is totally rough. I'm barely putting any time into quantizing or cleaning up notes or adjusting and getting the most realistic sounds I can out of the instruments, because what I'm doing here is really exploring ideas of how this one silly little melody could be played off of, be used as a variation. And so far, we've talked about how we're able to utilize the idea of doing a drone or a pedal tone, either low or higher, the idea of adding a bit of a bass line that moves, that changes the way the melody is even perceived, the idea of now having an ostinato, a rhythmic structure holding down the excitement and building up the excitement for our melody line to be played over. And now I think, what other way could we do this? Well, you can see right here, I thought about, well, what if I just take it out of 4/4? 4/4 is so, I don't know, 2018. Let's try to do something in the 2019 range. Let's do 3/4 maybe. I don't know, maybe that would work. So I put together the same melody, just variation as 3/4. And then thinking, okay, now that I got the melody, what if I take those other orchestration ideas? And you hear there what I did is I utilized a little bit of percussion to give us the pause, pa to pa, and then in the high, I think I used a variation of a high brass. Although I probably, looking at it now, I probably would have wanted it to be a high string because we got the brass in our main melody there. So 3/4, yeah, okay, it's a little pa-y, but it's interesting. What about a 6/8 feel, like that Marvel, exciting, adventurous kind of sound? What if we did something like an ostinato in 6/4? What would that do for us? Or I'm sorry, 6/8. It's exciting, just that ostinato alone, and it looks like it's, for some reason, the melody isn't triggering. Here we go. Now let's listen to the same thing in 6/8 with that melody on top. Yeah, it starts to become something entirely different. It's got a lot of excitement to it now. And then we do a little bit of a compliment, something that we played with back when we were in 4/4, with a little bit of like that, those brass parts kind of poking out, like a little bit of John Williams would do something like that, perhaps. And Joe, just from these experimentations, I start to see what the possibilities of this little melody line could be when I want to break it out and build something more exciting. I haven't even talked about harmonizing or passing a line from one group of instruments or sections to another. I haven't even talked about soloists playing those parts. Well, my hope in this little example is to show you that by spending a little bit of time and experimenting, trying variations, regardless of what kind of music you're making, you're bound to come across something interesting that maybe takes your music in a whole different direction, that makes it more exciting, gives you the ability to find, refine, and develop a voice for that piece of music or for yourself as a composer, and hopefully fight off making boring music that sounds the same as what everyone else is making. Thank you guys so much for this 10-day vlog experiment. It's been so much fun to share my thoughts, my ideas, but it's been even more rewarding to get to read your comments, interact, get to understand and know a little bit more about you. So over the next couple weeks or so, I'll probably get back into first look videos and review videos. There's always going to be new reviews on the website, samplelibraryreview.com. But I'd love your input. Which of these 10 vlogging videos that I did are the most valuable to you? Which did you feel you got information, inspiration, or some other ration word that would make a really great rhyme right now? Please comment below and tell me. That way, when I go back and look through what happened over these 10 days and what I could share in that. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you in the next video.